Hello friends. So let us talk about design rationally. Design rationally is the information that explain why the computer system is the way it is, including its structural or architectural description. So that means it tell us about how the structural, how the architectural is formed with its behavior in description. So that means it is in the form of the entire system, that how the system is designed. So designing rationally has has the ability to show, to include the structural, functional or behavioral description. That means it will show us in detail, in depth of the design. So design rationally relates to an activity of both reflection, that is doing design rationally, and documentation, that is creating a design rationally. So it is also included in your life cycle. So it is beneficial to have the design rationally for several reasons, like an explicit form. A design rationally provides a communication mechanism among the members of the design team. So during that stage of design or for maintenance, it's possible to understand what decisions were made. And accumulated knowledge is in the form of design rationalists for the set of products that can be used to transfer what has worked in one situation. So, in HCI, in terms of HCI, how design rationally has been in a particularly important, because there is usually no single best design alternative. We have to give them certain designs which includes a button on the screen which is always visible, or hide all the actions in the menu that when it's invoked. So even if the optimal solution did exist for a given design decision, there is a space alternative is big that is unlikely designer would discover. So let's see how the design rationally works on. So we have the process oriented design rationally. That means the root issue is identified, which presents the main problem or the question that the argument is addressing. Now, why there is a need to develop a system? It's because the rise has caused for use to, we need to use the system. Now, why do you think the platform of mobile technology has been improved from years together? This has been in a, it's like in the ages that it has been growing so fast rapidly. Why? Because this technology was so in cheap preferable that even a common man can afford this. So that is the reason that why we need it. Since it is available, so we need it. So various positions are put forward in a potential resolution for the root cause. The root cause, first and foremost, is identified, which represents the main problem or the question that the argument is addressing. Then there is one IBIS, pronounced as IBIS, a hierarchical structure to a design rationale is created. And each of these secondary issues turn into expanded by position and argument and so on. So there is issues and there are the sub questions that the issue is addressing. The a graphical version of IBS has been defined, which make the structure of the design rationally. Now, there have been several other version of the IBS notation, both graphical and the textual. Beside Jeeps, most version retain the distinction between the issues and the position, the argument. So it includes the issues, position, in which positions it rise, and the argument that what why we need to have this and so on. The use of IBIS and any of the descendants is process oriented as needed. It's intended to use for during meetings, design meeting as means of recording or structure the issue deliberated. Then we have design space analysis. So the design space is initially structured by the set of questions representing the major issues of the design. Since design space analysis is structure oriented, it is not important that the question recorded are the actual question asked during the design meeting. So there is the questions and the options are given below, and the options are followed by the criteria. And They have a consecutive questions, so that is QOC notations. That means issues raised based on reflection and understanding of the actual design activities. So questions in the design space analysis is similar to the IBS, like the root. So the issue are discussed along with the questionnaires. So a key effective of the key design to space using the QC notation is deciding the right question to use to structure the space and the correct criteria to judge the options. Then you have another structure oriented is called decision representation language. So it consists of structure of design space is similar fashion like QOC, that is questions is followed by the options and options are followed by the criteria, that is your QOC. Through its language is somewhat larger and it has a formal semantics. The question, the options and criteria in DRL given as decision problems, alternative and the goal. So the sparse language in QC used to assess an option relative to the criteria like positive or negative assessment. But the advantage of formal semantics of DRL is that means decision representative language, that is that the decision rationale can be used as a computational mechanism to help manage the large volume of information. And design space analysis directly address the claim that no design activity can hope to uncover all design possibilities, so that we can hope to achieve its document the small part of the design space that has been available. So the question and option criteria given the same. So I said this earlier. Now the decision space has no activity to uncover all the designs possibilities. So sometimes what happens, even if we have a outline of the design, even if we think number of designs, but we never go for the addressing all possibilities. We only in a hope to achieve the document which has a design which is under investigated. That means it's a question can arise. The issue this has been discussed. So advantage of the most ad hoc technique is that it can abstract away from the particular design meeting and represent the knowledge that is used for the other products. Then, just one again the point, one point left in design spaces analysis. The major disadvantage is the increased overhead because more and more designs can come up, and we need to find a suitable design. So we actually what happens is when we talk about when we discuss with the client, so we have the number of the design things coming up, how the alignments can be done, how the interactive system will adorn, will look, what about the elements, how the elements would be arranged, and so on. So these are the disadvantage that how at a time if all thoughts come together, a designer gets confused like how will you put up and so on. So now we'll get to our next point, that is psychological design rationale. The final category of design rationale tries to make explicit psychological claims of usability inherent in an interactive system. So people use this computer to accomplish some tasks in their particular work domain, right? So when designing an interactive system of that domain, the designer takes into account that user currently performs to the system and how the new version will look about and how it will execute. So this task identification serves as a part of the requirements from the new system and can be done through empirical observation of how people perform their work currently. So, Carroll and Ranson refers to the real life phenomenon as the task artifact cycle. So they have done the example like the electronic spreadsheet, like Microsoft Excel. So how the calculation is done, how the data is entered, and so on. So when a new system is implemented or become an artifact, further observation reveals that it is addition to the required task is allowed. It was built to support. So it also support user in a task that the designer never intended. So the purpose of psychological design rationale is to support this natural task, the artifact cycle of design activity. And the main focus is not to capture the designer intention in building. It is psychological design that the how it will produce aims to explicit the consequence of design for the user. So it gives an understanding that what does the user need to perform and how will it will be done. So the first step of psychological design is rationally to identify the types that the user has proposed to proposed system that will address, and it will address by those tasks question that the user tries to answer. So it's like, for example, there are the list of questions given that we can require. What can I do? That is, what are the possible operation or functions that is programming environment allows? How does it work? That is, what do the various function do? How can I do this? This is a once I particular operation I want to perform, but how do I go about in programming? So for each of the set of scenario, system behavior is suggested to support the user in addressing the question. So for example, what can I do? So designer can subscribe a scenario uh, where the no voice, a beginner, is first confronted with the learning environment and see that if he and she can invoke some demo program to investigate how the application works. So if we see that if we have a problem, so there is a help thing, or help, or usually like contact us. So in this way, we can directly communicate, not directly communicate, but through the help assistance, we can get the help from the designer. That how can we do this? Now, designer do not always have the relevant background in psychology, cognitive science, ergonomics, and sociology, business, or computer science. So it's necessary to understand the consequences of those theory. Yes, this is one of the point. Like always, the designer would not be a person of our field. So what happens is that it's difficult to understand the consequences of those theories. And one more thing, the principle are abstract design rule, which means is that has a high generality and low authority. So standards are specific design rules, high in authority and limited in application, whereas guidelines tends to be lower in authority and more in application. So now they have come into the point that they are telling us about the standards and the guideline, how standards and the guideline can be designed rationally path help us to understand the way to implement the to implement our design or to think like a user. So standard is certain pattern that is high in authority, but it standards cannot be used in application. Standard pattern, suppose, and guidelines are tend to be low, but we normally follow the guidelines. Like the guidelines should be according to the user. We follow certain principles, certain guidelines. So in this way, we finish with the design rationally, and next, we will talk about uh, standard and guidelines. Till then,